Welcome to Cultured, the podcast about everything fermenting with your host, Natalie Marin. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Cultured, the podcast where we explore the wild, wonderful world of fermentation and how it connects to every part of our lives. I am your host, Natalie, and today's episode is going to be a deep dive into something truly close to the heart and the gut. We're talking about how fermented foods can support your mental health. That's right. Your mood, your clarity, your ability to handle stress, and even symptoms of depression and anxiety can all be influenced by what's happening in your belly. In this episode, we'll explore what your gut is really made of and why it's often called your second brain. The gut-brain axis, the incredible communication system between your digestive system and your mind. How serotonin, one of the key mood-regulating chemicals, is mostly produced in your gut. The role of a healthy whole foods diet, especially fermented foods, in supporting emotional well-being. And it's not just food. We'll also touch on other powerful practices like movement, journaling, and using herbs that can shift your mental state and help you feel more balanced. So whether you're feeling great and want to stay that way, or you're in a season where your mental health needs a little more love and support, this episode is for you. So let's get into it. So what makes up the gut? All right, let's start with the basics. What exactly is the gut? When we talk about the gut, we're referring to the entire digestive tract, starting from the mouth down to the esophagus, through the stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and out the other end. But for today's focus on mood and mental health, we're zooming in on the small and large intestines, especially the colon, where most of the magic happens. Inside your gut lives a wild ecosystem of microbes, often referred to as the gut microbiome. This includes trillions, yes, trillions of bacteria, fungi, viruses, and even parasites. And before that makes you squirm, it's important to know that the vast majority of them are either harmless or incredibly helpful. These tiny organisms help us break down food, produce vitamins like B12 and K2, and support our immune system. And here's the kicker. They also produce or influence neurotransmitters, the chemicals that shape our mood and brain function. Now, diversity is key. Think of your gut like a rainforest. The more variety in species and healthier and more resilient the ecosystem. When you have a rich and balanced microbiome, it can keep inflammation down. It can process nutrients efficiently and can even calm your nervous system. But when the balance tips, say certain bacteria overgrow and others die off, things start to go sideways. And the main cause of this quite often is an unhealthy diet. So what causes that imbalance? Let's go over all of the main reasons why you would have that imbalance. Some of the biggest culprits are antibiotics. While life-saving when needed, they don't just wipe out bad bacteria, they carpet bomb the good ones too. And a lot of us are unaware, especially for people who do buy mass-produced meat and dairy products. Quite often in certain countries, it's a common practice to constantly treat the animals with antibiotics. And as a byproduct, we are consuming the antibiotics through the milk or the meat. And that also has a huge negative effect on our gut microbiome. So if you do still consume meat and milk products, just be aware that there are some farmers who do treat their animals continuously with antibiotics, and you are consuming those antibiotics without realizing it. Chronic stress. This is a huge one. Ongoing anxiety or high cortisol levels can actually change the composition of your gut bacteria and weaken your gut lining. So being stressed out for an extended period of time, you will start to feel sick. And a lot of that starts in your gut. When your main system for where your healing begins is at its weakest, that's where you're also going to start getting sick. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, diet plays a very huge role. So the modern sugar-heavy, ultra-processed diet, that diet feeds all the bad guys in your gut, leaving little nourishment for the good, beneficial microbes. We will definitely be going into this into greater detail coming up. So over time, this imbalance called dysbiosis is a new word for you, can contribute to issues like bloating, brain fog, that's a very big one, skin problems, you might have suddenly got breakouts or acne, and yes, even depression and anxiety. So keeping your gut happy and diverse is one of the best things you can do for your overall well-being. And it starts with what you feed it. And spoiler alert, fermented foods can play a big role in that because we are actively adding essential probiotics, which are made up of bacteria and yeasts that your body really need, and even fungi. But we'll get into that soon. But let's talk about the incredible communication system and between your gut and brain first, and that is the gut-brain axis. So now that we have discussed how our gut is a microscopic community and how it is important to keep that community healthy and thriving, let's talk about the gut-brain axis. This is an absolutely fascinating and powerful connection that changes the way we understand mental health and how our body actually works. Simply put, the gut-brain axis is the communication highway between your brain and your gut, and it's bi-directional. So that means the brain speaks to the gut and the gut speaks to the brain, and they are in conversation 24/7. The main superhighway that carries this conversation is called the vagus nerve, and that's why there have been a lot of things coming up with regards to looking after the vagus nerve, including things like meditations that you can do in order to help keep that nerve healthy. And there's a whole new trend around looking after that vagus nerve. This nerve runs from the brainstem all the way down through your neck and chest into your abdomen. And it's like a direct phone line between your gut and your central nervous system. About 80 to 90% of the information actually flows from the gut to the brain and not the other way around. So when your gut is inflamed, out of balance, or lacking good bacteria, it sends distress signals up to the brain, which can affect how you feel emotionally, cognitively, even energetically. On the flip side, however, if you're experiencing chronic stress or trauma, your brain can send those signals down into your digestive system, slowing down digestion, changing your gut chemistry, and sometimes even triggering symptoms like bloating or IBS. You've probably felt this before, right? Thinking about the term gut feeling. Maybe you've walked into a room and instantly felt something was off or had butterflies in your stomach before a big presentation or a first date. That's your gut brain axis in action, reading the room and firing off a response. It's intuitive, fast, and deeply rooted in your nervous system. So, this idea of learning to trust your intuition really opens up your mind completely here. And you start to realize if your gut is sending 80 to 90% of its information up to your brain, then following your intuition, following your gut really is a lot more powerful than we have realized in the past. And here's where things get even more interesting. Your gut bacteria plays a direct role in this conversation. You see, they help to produce neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and GABA, all of which are involved in regulating your mood, your sleep, and your ability to handle stress. In fact, some gut bacteria can literally influence whether you feel calm and grounded or anxious and wired. The immune system is also part of this axis. So, about 70% of your immune cells live in your gut. So, those are the cells that help to fight off disease. Chronic inflammation in the gut can contribute to inflammation in the brain, which has been linked to depression, anxiety, and cognitive decline, which means you may be feeling slow and your response rate to things may be impacted. If you ever felt foggy, low, or emotionally off and couldn't quite explain it, your gut might have been trying to tell you something. Understanding this connection is empowering. It means your gut isn't just about digesting food, right? And that's how we are taught in schools. It's actually a key player in your emotional and mental health. And when you support your gut, you're also supporting your brain. Next up, we're going to dig into a hormone that most people associate with happiness, serotonin, and reveal why the majority of it is actually made in your gut. So let's talk about serotonin, often called the feel-good hormone. It's one of the most important neurotransmitters for regulating mood, sleep, digestion, and even things like memory and pain perception. Most people associate serotonin with the brain, but here's a surprising part. About 90 to 95% of your serotonin is actually produced in the gut. Yep, not your head, in your digestive system. And it's not just floating around on its own. This process is deeply influenced by your gut bacteria. Certain microbes help produce or trigger the production of serotonin by interacting with the cells that line your intestines. These bacteria break down dietary fiber into short chain fatty acids, which then influence serotonin pathways. Others may produce precursor molecules like tryptophan, an amino acid found in foods like bananas, oats, and fermented dairy, which the body uses to make serotonin. And tryptophan is also what your body needs to help to regulate your sleep. I remember I was researching it a couple of years ago, and a very good source of tryptophan is actually lettuce. So if you are struggling to fall asleep at night, have a green salad packed full of lettuce, and that'll help your body get that chemical in order to help you to sleep better at night. Also, if you have dairy, I remember when I was a teenager, I was going through a period of insomnia, and my aunt, who's a nurse, said to me, have some cheese before going to bed. And obviously, cheese is a form of fermented dairy, and it did help wonders. So, or you have hot milk with some black pepper in, that also works really well. Tryptophan is the amino acid that your body uses to make serotonin. So, the state of your microbiome, the balance of good and bad bacteria, directly affects how much serotonin you can produce. If you have a healthy, diverse microbiome, you're more likely to have emotional resilience, better sleep, and more stable energy and mood throughout the day. But when there's dysbiosis, meaning an imbalance or lack of microbial diversity, serotonin production can drop. And that's when we start to see issues like increased anxiety, irritability, low mood, and even symptoms of depression. It becomes a vicious cycle. Poor diet or chronic stress damages the gut, which reduces serotonin, which affects your mood, which leads to more stress. And the cycle continues because quite often when we are in those states, we tend to eat more junk food in order to get a sort of quick fix and to make ourselves feel better. But actually, we are causing ourselves more damage. When we are in a state of mind like that, it is actually ideal for us to start eating more fermented foods and to eat more healthy, because it will do the opposite. It'll boost our systems and help to make us feel better. But cortisol is funny like that. When the cortisol chemical is running, when you're feeling stressed out, you do want to eat those comfort foods. You want to eat those salts. You want to eat those starches. You want to eat those processed foods just to feel better. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, it ends up having the opposite effect. The good news is that it's not fixed. You can rebuild your microbiome, and in doing so, support your mental health from the inside out. Fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, and miso introduce beneficial bacteria, while prebiotic foods like garlic, onions, and oats feed those bacteria and help them thrive. This is why I always say taking care of your gut isn't just about digestion. It's about creating the internal chemistry that allows you to feel balanced, hopeful, and grounded in yourself. Next up, we'll look into how a healthy overall diet, beyond just fermented foods, plays a role in lifting your mood and calming the nervous system. Right, now that we've explored serotonin and the gut brain axis, let's bring it all together and talk about how your everyday diet shapes your mental and emotional well being. The truth is, what you eat doesn't just feed you, it feeds your microbiome, which then influences everything from your mood to your sleep, your stress levels, and even your sense of joy or motivation. Let's start with the basics. A whole foods based diet. This is huge. I cannot express to you how important this is. We live in a society where we really eat processed foods and we only end up having a small part of the food instead of the whole food. And the whole food is has been designed by nature for our body to break down and to use every part of it in order to support the system to digest that food properly and to improve our own bodies. So the whole foods based diet means foods that are close to their natural state as possible. This provides your body with vitamins, minerals, fiber, and antioxidants it needs to function optimally. But more importantly, for mental health, whole foods support your gut lining and feed your beneficial bacteria. Fiber is key here. Soluble fiber is key. It is so important. It is found in things like oats, legumes, apples, flax seeds, and a lot of fruits in general. It acts as a prebiotic, which means it feeds the good bacteria in your gut and helps them multiply. A fiber rich diet supports the production of short chain fatty acids, which reduce inflammation and help regulate brain chemistry. And of course, we can't talk about gut health without mentioning fermented foods. These are naturally rich in live probiotics that help replenish and diversify your microbiome. Some of the best fermented foods for your gut brain health include yogurt. It is beneficial in bacteria like lactobacillus, especially when labeled with live active cultures. When you are purchasing yogurt in the stores, most of the yogurts available are hyper processed. They have added sugars, added sweeteners, added flavorants, and they're not really those live active cultures anymore. The best you can do is try and specifically look for a raw yogurt that still has live cultures, or if you can, try and find unprocessed milk and make your own yogurt. That will be your best way of being able to know that the yogurt that you get has the live cultures that you want. Kefir. So, kefir has gained a lot of popularity in recent years. It is a fermented milk drink with even more diverse strains than yogurt. It's basically a probiotic powerhouse. And if you live in South Africa here, you can add Mars to this list. Mars is a freely available fermented milk product, a soured fermented milk that you can go and buy. It's incredibly affordable and it is just packed full of those essential bacteria that your body can use. Then we have our more vegan friendly options like sauerkraut. You can make a vegan friendly kimchi. And remember, most kimchis are made with fish, have some kind of fish product in it, but there are obviously vegan recipes out there. And these fermented vegetables are packed with fiber, which are so important, and probiotics, plus a little kick of spice and tang. So they also make your plate taste better. Miso, a fermented soybean paste, often used in soups and dressings. It contains helpful bacteria and beneficial peptides. And of course, don't forget kombucha. Kombucha is a fizzy fermented tea that can offer a refreshing way to support your gut. So now let's contrast that with the standard American diet, or SAD for short. And honestly, it lives up to the name. The standard American diet is high in refined sugars, processed fats, and ultra processed foods. It's low in fiber, low in antioxidants, and totally lacking in fermented foods unless you count pickles floating in vinegar, which often are pasteurized, so there's no live cultures in there either. This kind of diet feeds the wrong bacteria, contributes to inflammation, and can damage the gut lining over time. It's been linked to studies to increased rates of depression, anxiety, and even cognitive decline. On the flip side, Mediterranean style diets, which emphasize vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, healthy fats like olive oil, and yes, fermented foods like yogurts, olives, and sourdough, have been shown to lower inflammation, reduce symptoms of depression, and even protect against neurodegenerative diseases. In fact, some mental health professionals are starting to refer to the gut as the first brain when it comes to supporting emotional balance, because you can literally shift your mental state by shifting what's on your plate. The message here isn't about perfection, it's about intention. Adding in just one serving of a fermented food each day, choosing a whole ingredients diet when possible, and giving your gut a little love, it can go a long way toward helping you feel more clear, steady, and supported from the inside out. Coming up, we'll explore some of the non-food tools that also support mental health, because the journey to healing and balance is multifaceted. Before we go forward, I want to share with you my own personal story and why this is such a passionate topic of mine. Around 13 years ago, I decided to wean myself off a lot of psychiatric drugs. So I was, and I mean, this is about 13, 14 years ago, I was spending thousands every month on an assortment of drugs, from antidepressants to antipsychotics to mood stabilizers, sleeping tablets. I was on a lot of drugs and I was not feeling any better. If anything, I was starting to feel even worse. So I decided to change my lifestyle and to go off of the drugs and to make things better for myself. And there were a few things I used to help me get there. I wasn't really into the fermented foods at the time, but I did change a lot of things, and I just wanted to share these with you. I changed these things to help me get to where I am today, where I don't need to be on an assortment of drugs in order to be able to get out of bed in the morning, because that was me. And even on all those drugs, on thousands of rands worth of drugs, I couldn't even really get out of bed in the morning. I just want to mention I'm not a health practitioner or a mental health practitioner in any way. I'm literally just sharing this podcast with you because it is something that is close to my heart, and I want to be able to share my journey and my experience and my understanding of all of this with you. So the very first thing I did was I changed my environment. So I moved to a completely different environment, and this was more, it wasn't necessarily a better environment. It was just a way of me saying to myself, I'm going to start new, I'm going to start fresh. So that's the first thing I did. But obviously, I'm very aware most people cannot change the environment, and that's fine. There are a lot of things that you can work on changing. The next thing would be your diet. Adding in a lot of fresh foods, fresh fruits, vegetables, and having a diet high in fruits and vegetables already makes a big impact. As you know, when you're eating a whole food, you are getting everything that you need, especially the fiber, which is one of the key things is lacking in modern unhealthy diets is fiber. But if you're eating a whole food, so a very good example of this as well is when someone is feeling sick and they want to drink orange juice. I did a basic nutrition course many, many years ago, and I remember the nutritionist saying to us, most of the vitamin C in an orange is in the pith and the thin membrane of the orange. So when you're juicing out the juice and you're just drinking the juice, you're getting the least amount of vitamin C that you can from that orange. The ideal thing to do is eat the entire orange, even the bitter white pith, because that is where most of the vitamin C is stored. And I found that very fascinating, how in modern society we've taught to have a quick fix and just drink the juice, where actually just peeling the entire orange and consuming the entire orange is way more beneficial for you. And the same thing with our breads, and a lot of our breads are so hyper processed that there's no fiber, and you'll often find in these hyper processed foods, and then the breads on the packaging, it says they're with added fiber. But naturally, if you're using a whole, or you're consuming a whole grain bread, that fiber would be there already. There would be no need to go and additionally add fiber. So having the whole food is the most ideal. That is one of the biggest things you can do just to help improve your mood, is to have a better diet and everything within moderation. Then just simple practices. Some of the biggest practices I did was I got up and I exercised every day. Exercising is obviously very huge on regulating mood. And then I really got into my herbal remedies, and I use a lot of plants and herbs. And I had herbal tea remedies 2 to 3 times a day to help replace all those chemical drugs that I was taking. And what I found is not only did they work about the same, but I didn't have any of the nasty side effects. A lot of these pharmaceuticals that we do take have horrendous side effects, and they often make us feel worse than the condition we had in the first place. Another good example of that is I recently had I was sick. I don't get sick very often. So when I get sick, I'm usually in denial about it. And I was like, oh no, it's just allergies and brush it off. But eventually I had to admit that I'm actually sick. And the first thing I did was I went to my garden. I went to my garden and I picked herbs and plants from my garden and I consumed those. And I drank a lot of kombucha for the probiotics. And I felt better. And not only did I feel better, I had this realization that I had no grogginess or any of that horrible side effects that would come from having a medication, a doctor prescribed medication, or even an over the counter medication. So you're getting everything that you need from plants and from your diet. You don't need to necessarily, unless it's something very serious, you don't need to necessarily consume mass produced pharmaceuticals, which, although they will help you feel better, in the long run, in the short run, they actually can make you feel worse. And as we discussed earlier, antibiotics are very harmful to your body. Cortisone is harmful to your body. Cortisone for extended periods of time can start to break down your immune system. So once we start to become aware of what we are putting in our bodies, you might find that you're becoming more conscious of what you really need to put in your body. And if you just have a bit of a head cold or the flu, maybe it's better to go to your garden and to pick those herbs and have those homemade herbal remedies, rather than to rush off to the pharmacy or the doctor and get a whole lot of harmful chemicals. The last thing I did, just took up the practice of journaling, just being able to write out. It was my way of being able to work through and deal with a lot of the things that I was going through. And that's what I want everyone to realize, is there's no one solution to depression and anxiety. There's a whole lot of things that you can do that, when combined, are most effective. So yes, absolutely, 100% add fermented foods to your diet. There's no doubt in my mind whatsoever that it helps to improve your depression or anxiety. But do bear in mind that it's not the only answer. There are other things you add to it to make it even more effective, like regular exercise, like some kind of therapy such as journaling or picking up a hobby. Obviously, my favorite hobby is fermenting foods. So when I'm super stressed out, you'll find me in the kitchen and I'll be doing something. I'll be making kimchi or sauerkraut, or I'll be doing some kind of fermenting in the kitchen. And that's my hobby. So the actual process of it is therapeutic. And then I eat it and that's therapeutic. And of course, for me, I love to share that food as well. And that makes me feel good being able to share my creations with my loved ones. So for you, decide what array of habits or activities are you going to be including in your life and how those combined are going to help to improve your mood and to help lift your depression. So let's go into a little bit more detail on those lifestyle practices that help to support mental health. So far, we've talked a lot about food, but mental health is also shaped by what you do beyond the plate. So let's take a few minutes to explore lifestyle practices that can dramatically support your mood, energy, and emotional balance, and yes, still link back to your gut. First up, as I mentioned, exercise. I would get on my bicycle every morning and I would go and have a good cycle around the town that I lived in. So moving your body increases the release of endorphins, which is the brain's natural feel-good chemicals. But what's even more exciting is that regular movement boosts levels of BDNF, known as brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Think of it as a miracle grow for your brain. It helps neurons grow, protects existing brain cells, and supports learning and memory, all of which can be impacted by depression and anxiety. And guess what? Exercise also positively affects your gut microbiome. Research shows that people who engage in regular moderate movement, like walking, yoga, swimming, or dancing, have a more diverse and resilient gut flora. It also helps lower cortisol, your main brain stress hormone, which, when chronically high, can inflame both your brain and your gut. The next tool I want to spotlight is one that's deeply close to my heart, as I mentioned earlier, and that is journaling. Writing things down is like clearing out that mental attic. It helps you observe your own thoughts without judgment, track emotional patterns, and reconnect your deeper self. It creates space for self awareness, and in a world full of constant noise, that's a radical act of healing. And yes, journaling also impacts your body. Emotional stress raises cortisol levels, which can contribute to inflammation in the gut lining. But when we offload that stress onto paper, we regulate our nervous system, less tension, more ease, better digestion, and better mood. So, whether it's a morning brain dump, which is usually one of my favorite things to do, gratitude journaling before bed, or just jotting down how you feel after meals or meditations, make it a ritual in your life. And once you make it a ritual or a habit, you can do it every day and just take it in your stride. Let it become your mirror and your release valve. Both of these practices, movement and journaling, not only support brain chemistry, they also nourish your gut brain axis from both ends. You're calming your mind and supporting your microbiome at the same time. That's holistic healing at its best. And now let's take that a step further, and I'm going to discuss the world of herbs and natural plant allies. So let's talk about herbs and adaptogens. Gentle yet powerful plants that can support emotional balance, improve gut function, and even help you feel more grounded in your day-to-day life. Many herbs are ferment friendly, but because they are mostly ferment friendly, this means you can use them not only in teas and tonics, but also to infuse your fermented foods with both flavor and function. Here are some of my favorite gut brain allies. Lavender is very common, known for its calming anti-anxiety properties. It's beautiful in herbal teas and can be added to honey ferments, and it is absolutely delicious in kombucha infusions. Lavender and lemon is one of my favorite kombucha infusions. Lemon balm. This cheerful citrusy herb is a mild mood booster and nervous system tonic. It helps ease tension, supports digestion, and pairs beautifully with mint teas and is absolutely delicious with vinegars. Holy basil or tulsi. I have a bush of this growing in my yard. And when I decided to change my lifestyle. This is actually when I discovered holy basil. It's one of the plants that was growing in the garden where I moved to, and I just fell in love with it. It is a powerful adaptogen that balances stress hormones and helps regulate mood. You can sip it as a tea, which is often how I used to take it, or ferment it into tonics like a tulsi honey elixir. Chamomile tea, very common one, soothes both the belly and the mind. It's fantastic before bed or infused into a fermented ginger bug for a calming soda. A nice chamomile wild soda just sounds absolutely amazing. Rosemary. It's often overlooked for the mood, but it's actually uplifting and improves memory and clarity. Plus, it's antimicrobial, making it great for infusing brines, oils, or krauts. I would get out my filter coffee machine and I would put rosemary in it instead of coffee. And I would often, slowly throughout the day, drink rosemary tea. And I found that was really amazing to help to improve and give me some mental clarity. And another big one for me was borage. Borage is got such a light flavor. I would drink it as a tea every morning, a borage tea, but it's got such a light, almost cucumber flavor. And again, it would go really beautifully in a wild soda ferment. So if you are into your wild soda ferments or your kombuchas, consider making a brew that has a borage infusion. It is absolutely delicious and one of the best natural antidepressants that you can grow in your garden. These herbs work by modulating the nervous system, reducing inflammation, and even interacting with neurotransmitters like serotonin. So you're not just sipping tea, you're literally sending chemical signals of safety and support to your brain and your gut. Try rotating these into your routines, making a calming evening tea, add fresh herbs to your next batch of sauerkraut or kombucha, or try fermenting lemon balm and honey for a gut-friendly syrup. Plants are wise and they want to help us return to balance. In our next segment, we'll start bringing all these threads together and I'll share a few practical tips to help you start integrating these ideas into your everyday life. So let's bring it all together. We've explored how your gut is so much more than a digestive tube. It's a vibrant, intelligent ecosystem that's constantly communicating with your brain. We talked about how most of your serotonin is produced in the gut, how the gut brain axis shapes your mood, and how things like stress, poor diet, and antibiotics can throw it all off balance. But we also explored the good news, how simple, nourishing choices like eating fermented foods, moving your body, journaling your thoughts, and sipping herbal teas can gently guide your system back to balance. So here's my invitation to you this week. Try adding just one fermented food to your routine, just one. Maybe it's a spoonful of sauerkraut with dinner, a kefir smoothie in the morning, or a cozy bowl of miso soup, or a morning cup of kombucha. Pair it with a supportive practice like a 10-minute walk in nature, a journaling session, or even just a moment to breathe deeply and check in with yourself. And if you're feeling playful, experiment with herbal teas or try infusing your ferments with the calming plants like lavender or lemon balm. These little additions can make a big impact on your mood and overall well-being. I'd love to hear how it goes. Share your experience, your questions, or even your favorite fermented food in the comments below. Remember, healing doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes it's as simple as what's on your fork, what's in your cup, and what you whisper kindly to yourself. Thanks for being here with me on Cultured, and until next time, stay curious, stay kind to your gut, and keep it wild. Thank you for listening to this episode of Cultured Podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation and want to help keep the jars bubbling and the podcast going, you can support the show in a couple of lovely ways. Visit my online shop for fermentation tools, digital guides, and handmade goodies, perfect for your own cultured kitchen. Or if you just want to say thanks, and keep me caffeinated during my late night fermenting sessions, you can always buy me a cup of coffee. The links are in the description. Your support means the world, and it helps this little fermentation corner of the internet keep growing. So until next time, stay curious, stay cultured.